The morning sky over New Haven was the color of fresh peaches. Guided her shuttle through the thin clouds, watching the sun rise over the agricultural fields below. She had made this supply run 100 times before. It was peaceful work, the kind she had dreamed about when she left Earth 15 years ago. Her daughter's voice crackled over the radio. "Mom, don't forget the chocolate this time." Smiled, "I won't forget, Wu, I promise." The colony stretched out beneath her, a patchwork of farms and small towns. 50,000 people called New Haven home. They grew food, raised families, and built lives far from the crowded cities of Earth. It was everything the advertisements had promised when they signed up for colony life. The shuttle's warning system beeped, frowned at the display. Something large was entering the atmosphere, very large. She opened the general channel. "New Haven Control, this is Shuttle 7. I'm reading multiple atmospheric entries. Can you confirm?" Static answered her, then a voice strained and urgent. It was the colony administrator. "All shuttles return to base immediately. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill." His hands moved across the controls before her mind caught up. She banked hard, pushing the shuttle's engines to maximum. Behind her, the sky turned dark. She looked back and her blood went cold. Ships, dozens of them. They were nothing like human vessels. These were massive, angular things covered in black armor. They blotted out the sun as they descended. "Control, what are those?" His voice shook. "Unknown. We're trying to establish communication. Just get back here." The first explosion lit up the horizon. Then another, and another. Watched in horror as bright flashes erupted across the colony. The communications tower vanished in a ball of fire. The central administration building collapsed. The eastern farms became a sea of flames. Her radio filled with screaming voices, people calling for help, parents looking for children. Then nothing, just static. Shuttle rocked as a shockwave hit. Alarms blared. She was losing altitude fast. The ground rushed up to meet her. She fought the controls, managed to level out just enough. The shuttle hit hard, skidding across a field before coming to rest against a hillside. Everything hurt. Blood ran down her forehead, unbuckled and crawled out of the wreckage. Smoke filled the air. In the distance, the colony burned. She ran. Her home was 5 kilometers away. Her children were there. Wu was 13. Minho was 10. They were home alone. The bombing continued for hours, hid in drainage ditches when the alien ships passed overhead. She covered her ears against the thunder of explosions. Twice, she had to change direction when fires blocked her path. When she finally reached her neighborhood, most of it was gone. Her house was a pile of rubble. Fell to her knees, screaming her children's names. "Mom!" She turned. Wu emerged from a nearby basement entrance, pulling Minho behind her. They were dirty and terrified but alive. Grabbed them both, holding them so tight they gasped. "The basement," Wu sobbed. "We heard the sirens and ran to the neighbor's basement like you taught us." Other people emerged from underground shelters. Not many. Maybe 20 from a neighborhood that had housed 200. They stared at the ruins of their lives. An older man named Bum took charge. "We need to get to the caves. The mining caves on the West Ridge. It's the only place that might be safe." They moved through the burning colony in small groups. Saw bodies in the streets. Entire buildings reduced to foundations. Fires that would burn for days. They found other survivors along the way. By the time they reached the caves, their group had grown to nearly 300 people. The caves went deep into the mountains. They had been dug years ago for mineral extraction, but were now abandoned. The survivors pushed into the darkness, putting as much rock as possible between them and the aliens above. The bombing lasted 3 days. The sound echoed through the caves like distant thunder. The survivors huddled in the dark, sharing what little food and water they had. Children cried. Adults whispered prayers to gods they had never really believed in before. On the fourth day, the bombing stopped. The silence was worse than the noise. Bum organized a scouting party, volunteered. They crept out of the caves at dawn expecting to find alien soldiers everywhere. Instead, they found nothing, just ruins and smoke and silence. New Haven was dead, the buildings were destroyed, the fields were burned, the spaceport was a crater, and everywhere bodies, so many bodies. Found one's body in the ruins of the control center. He had stayed at his post until the end. Near his hand was the communications console, still trying to send a signal into space, a signal to Earth. Over the next week, survivors emerged from hiding places across the colony. Basements, underground storage facilities, maintenance tunnels. From 50,000 colonists, fewer than 15,000 remained. They organized into work groups, burial details, water collection teams, food salvage units. Everyone had a job, everyone stayed busy. It was the only way to keep from thinking too much. Then the aliens came back. This time they didn't bomb. Instead, huge transport ships landed in the cleared areas. Ramps lowered, soldiers emerged. They were tall, maybe 7 feet, covered in dark chitinous armor that looked like it grew from their bodies. They moved with insect-like precision. They carried weapons that hummed with energy. The soldiers rounded up survivors, tried to run with her children, but there was nowhere to go. The aliens had scanners. They found everyone. Thousands of humans were herded into a clearing near the old spaceport. Alien soldiers surrounded them. Then a larger alien arrived, clearly a commander of some kind. It wore more elaborate armor and carried itself with authority. A device floated next to the commander. When it spoke, the device translated in flat, emotionless English. "You are now property of the Dominion. You will be relocated. You will work. Resistance means death. Cooperation means survival. Choose wisely." Families were separated. Young and strong adults in one group, children and elderly in another. Screamed as soldiers pulled Wu and Minho away from her. She fought against the alien holding her, but it was like fighting a statue. The alien didn't even seem to notice her struggles. They were loaded onto transports, hundreds of people packed into metal containers. No light, little air, pressed against the wall, trying to breathe, trying not to panic. The transport lifted off. Through a small gap in the container caught one last glimpse of New Haven, her home, her life, everything she had built, all of it gone. But as the transport climbed toward space, something changed. The container tilted suddenly. Alarms sounded. The aliens were shouting in their own language. The transport turned around and started descending. They landed hard. The container doors opened. Confused survivors stumbled out. The alien soldiers were running, moving equipment, loading their ships in a hurry. The commander was shouting orders. Its body language had changed. It looked afraid. Within hours, the alien ships lifted off and vanished into space. They left behind thousands of bewildered humans and the ruins of New Haven. Bum found in the crowd. What happened? Why did they leave? Looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, home. She thought about One and his distress signal. She thought about Earth's government receiving news of the massacre. She thought about what Earth might do in response. "I don't know," she said quietly, "but I think they just realized they made a terrible mistake." The survivors of New Haven waited in the ruins of their colony, not knowing that across the galaxy, humanity was preparing for war. The council chamber on Prime was built to inspire fear. Its walls stretched up 50 feet, carved from black stone that absorbed light. The High Council of the Dominion sat on elevated platforms, looking down on those who came before them. For 300 years, this room had been where the fate of entire worlds was decided. Clean the floors in the corner, trying to be invisible. That was the key to survival as a slave. Be quiet. Be useful. Don't attract attention. She had been captured 4 years ago when they raided the mining colony where she worked. They had killed most of the humans but kept a few who had useful skills. Spoke 17 languages. That made her valuable. She understood language now too, though she pretended not to. The aliens didn't know she could follow their conversations. That ignorance had kept her alive more than once. Today, the council chamber buzzed with unusual energy. All 12 High had been summoned for an emergency session. That almost never happened. Kept her head down and pushed her cleaning cart closer to hear better. Sung Min, the eldest, spoke first. His voice carried the clicking undertones of deep agitation. The human colony attack was not authorized. Admiral acted without approval. Another, younger and more aggressive, clicked his mandibles. What does it matter? They are a weak species, barely into space travel. They should be grateful we are only relocating them. Is dead, Sung Min said flatly. Silence fell over the chamber. How? Someone asked. He terminated himself, before we could question him, but his second officer provided intelligence reports. Sung Min gestured to a technician. Images appeared on the holographic display in the center of the room. Risked a glance. The images showed maps of human space, military analyses, intercepted communications. Her heart began to beat faster. The humans have responded to the New Haven incident, Sung Min continued, but not as we expected. There was no diplomatic communication, no request for negotiation, no demand for explanation. Instead, they issued a single statement to all known frequencies. The hologram shifted. Text appeared, translated into script, but could see the original English below it. She read the words and felt something she hadn't felt in 4 years. Hope. You have attacked our children. There will be no mercy, no negotiation, no quarter given. The aggressive laughed. Empty threats from a primitive species. What can they possibly do to us? Sung Min's body language showed no amusement. Our intelligence network has been monitoring human activity for the past 20 cycles. What we have discovered is concerning. More images appeared, ship designs, military installations, training facilities, technology specifications. His eyes widened. She had no idea Earth had built all of this. The humans call it the Reaper Protocol, Sung Min explained. A military program that has been active for over 60 of their years. They have been preparing for interstellar conflict since before they even encountered other species. Everything we thought was civilian infrastructure was dual purpose. Their mining operations hide military shipyards. Their trade vessels can convert to warships. Their colonists receive combat training. Impossible, another said. We have spies, we have intelligence. How did we miss this? Because they wanted us to miss it, Sung Min said quietly. The humans are not like us. They do not fight for territory or honor. They fight to protect what they consider theirs, and they fight with complete commitment. He pulled up more data. 3 human warships entered our border space 2 cycles ago. They destroyed the station and vanished before our response fleet arrived. 4 cycles ago, they struck supply depots in the system. 6 cycles ago, they attacked a military academy and captured 200 of our soldiers. All of this while appearing nowhere on our tracking systems. The council chamber erupted in angry clicks and hisses, argued over each other. How could a weak species do this? Why weren't they informed earlier? What was the military doing? Sung Min waited for quiet. The humans are not fighting a war of conquest. They are sending a message. Every target has been military. They avoid civilian casualties, but they are showing us that nowhere in our empire is safe from them. Then we send our full fleet, the aggressive said. We crush there. We show them what happens when they challenge the Dominion. We tried, Sung Min said softly. Battle Group 7 was dispatched to the human solar system, all 32 ships. They never returned. Human forces ambushed them in deep space. Not a single survived. The council fell silent again. 32 ships, gone. Battle Group 7 had been one of their strongest formations. We must sue for peace, Sung Min said. Immediately, I have drafted a message to the human government. He displayed the message. It acknowledged the attack. It claimed the responsible admiral had been executed. It offered complete withdrawal from human space, war reparations, and technology sharing. It begged for mercy. Translated the message from into human languages as part of her duties. As she worked, she allowed herself a small smile where no one could see. She remembered the last human soldier she had met before her capture. He had been a young man, barely 20, part of the colony defense force. He had told her something she never forgot. "We don't start fights," he had said, "but we sure as hell finish them." The message was transmitted on all frequencies. The council waited for a response. Days passed. Forces across the empire reported more attacks, a research station destroyed, a command center infiltrated, supply convoys ambushed. The humans were everywhere and nowhere. Finally, a response came from Earth. The entire council gathered to hear it. Sung Min activated the communication. A single word appeared on the display: received. Nothing else. No acceptance of terms, no negotiation, no mercy, just acknowledgement that the message had been heard. The aggressive's body language showed fear now. What does it mean? Are they accepting our terms? It means, Sung Min said slowly, they heard us, and they don't care. As if to confirm this, alarms began sounding throughout the building. A technician rushed in, his movements frantic. "High Council, multiple human vessels detected in the system. They are here, in our home system." The council erupted in panic. Sung Min remained seated, his old body still. He looked at the star map showing red dots approaching their planet. The humans had struck at the heart of the Dominion. In the chaos, no one noticed. She had stopped cleaning. She stood still, looking at the red dots on the map. Somewhere up there were human ships, human soldiers, her people, coming to show what happens when you attack Earth's children. The human fleet didn't bombard Prime. They didn't need to. They simply appeared, launched precise strikes on military targets, and vanished again. It took less than an hour. But the message was clear. "We can reach you anywhere. We can strike anytime. Your capital is not safe. Yours is not safe. Nothing is safe." The council met again in the damaged chamber. Sung Min drafted another message to Earth. More desperate this time. They offered everything: territory, resources, complete surrender. They begged for it to stop. Translated the message. She made sure every word was correct. When she finished, she looked at the words on the screen. The who had ruled through fear for centuries were now the ones who were afraid. Earth's response came faster this time, same as before: received. The attacks continued. Sung Min turned to the council. "We have lost," he said simply. "The humans will not stop until we pay for what we did. We have no choice but to accept whatever terms they eventually offer, and we must hope they decide to offer terms at all." The strongest military empire in the sector had been brought to its knees by the species they had dismissed as weak. And somewhere in a corner of the council chamber, a human slave smiled. Yang stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution and watched the stars. They looked different now than they had a month ago. Before New Haven, they had seemed peaceful, full of possibility. Now each star system was a potential battlefield. "Status report," he said quietly. His tactical officer looked up from her console. "All systems ready, Commander. Fleet formation is holding. We're in position." The Retribution was one of 15 Dreadnought-class warships that Earth had built in secret over the past 20 years. They were massive vessels, bristling with weapons that most alien species had never seen. Rail guns that could punch through battle armor from 1,000 kilometers away. Missile systems that could track and destroy dozens of targets simultaneously. Electronic warfare suites that could blind enemy sensors and take control of their communications. But the real weapon was the crew. Every person on board had trained for this. They knew their jobs, they trusted each other, and they were angry. "All ships reporting ready," the communications officer said. "Admiral Park sends his regards and says to give them hell." Yang allowed himself a thin smile. "Tell the Admiral we intend to." The military base below was one of their largest, 3,000 soldiers, dozens of warships, supply depots that served half their fleet. Intelligence said this was where they trained their special forces. "Target locked," the weapons officer said. "Fire." The Retribution's main gun spoke. Beams of concentrated energy lanced down through the atmosphere. The shields around the military base glowed bright, then failed. Secondary explosions rippled across the compound. Ships trying to launch were caught on the ground, torn apart before they could escape. It was over in minutes. The base was destroyed. No survivors, no mercy. "Jump point opening," the navigation officer announced. "We're out of here." The Retribution and her sister ships vanished into faster-than-light travel before reinforcements could arrive. They had appeared, struck their target, and disappeared like ghosts. It was how human forces operated now. Strike fast, strike hard, never stay to fight a fair battle. Across space, other human ships were doing the same thing. 15 separate strike groups, each hitting different targets: shipyards, command centers, supply lines, training facilities. Anything military was fair game. On the assault carrier, Vengeance climbed into her combat mech. The machine was 12 feet tall, covered in reactive armor, equipped with weapons powerful enough to level a building. It responded to her thoughts through a neural interface, moving like an extension of her own body. "Drop in 30 seconds, the pilot announced. Squad of 12 mechs stood ready in the drop bay. They were hitting a military academy on a colony world. The mission was simple: disable the facility, capture prisoners if possible, show that nowhere was safe. The bay doors opened, space and stars and a planet below. Mech stepped forward and fell. The atmospheric entry was rough. Heat built up around the mech's shields. The ground rushed up. At the last moment, retro thrusters fired. Mech hit the ground running, its feet tearing up pavement as it charged toward the academy. Soldiers opened fire. Energy bolts splashed against her shields. Returned fire with her mech's shoulder-mounted cannons. The academy's defensive turrets tracked her, but her electronic warfare suite scrambled their targeting. She was on them before they could adjust. The battle was one-sided. Soldiers were tough, but they had never faced anything like human combat mechs. Squad moved through the facility like a storm. Walls crumbled. Vehicles exploded. The forces broke and ran. But orders were clear. She didn't pursue the fleeing soldiers. She didn't destroy the residential areas. She focused on military targets only. This wasn't about genocide. This was about sending a message. Within an hour, the academy was disabled. 300 soldiers had surrendered. The rest had fled. Stood in the center of the compound, her mech's external speakers broadcasting a message in language. "You attacked our children. You thought we were weak. You were wrong. This is what happens when Earth sends its warriors. Tell your leaders, tell everyone, remember this day." The message was recorded by the. Within hours, it was spreading across their entire empire. Videos of human combat mechs tearing through their best defenses. Images of military bases burning. Reports of human ships appearing and disappearing at will. Fear spread faster than any plague. Wu led a different kind of mission. His team of 8 operators was infiltrating Prime itself. They wore stealth suits that bent light around them, making them nearly invisible. They moved through the capital city in complete silence. Their objective was simple but dangerous: rescue the human prisoners held in the council district. Get them out alive. They found in a slave quarter near the council chambers. She looked thin and tired, but her eyes were sharp. When Wu appeared in her cell, she didn't scream. She just smiled. "Took you long enough," she whispered. "Sorry for the delay. Had to fight our way across the galaxy first." They found 23 other human prisoners scattered throughout the district. All were rescued without firing a shot. They never knew the humans were there until it was too late. Before they left, Wu planted a device in the council chamber. It was a holographic projector set to loop endlessly. It showed footage from New Haven, the bombing, the dead colonists, the children crying, the ruins of homes and schools and hospitals. A simple caption appeared below the images: "Remember what you started." The rescue team and the freed prisoners escaped in a stolen transport. As they flew away from Prime, looked back at the planet where she had been enslaved for 4 years. She hoped she would never see it again. "How bad was it?" Wu asked quietly. "Bad enough," said, "but I survived. We all did, and now we're going home." The war continued for 6 months. Human forces struck hundreds of targets across space. They captured entire fleets. They disabled defensive networks. They infiltrated secure facilities and stole classified information. But they never struck civilian targets. Human forces went out of their way to avoid collateral damage. When a human missile headed for a military depot detected civilians nearby, it self-destructed rather than risk innocent lives. This confused the, why would an enemy show such restraint? Why not simply destroy everything? The answer was simple. Humanity wasn't fighting for territory or resources. They were fighting to punish those responsible and to ensure it never happened again. They wanted them to understand that mercy was a choice humans made, not a weakness to exploit. After 6 months, the military was in ruins. Their fleet was scattered. Their bases were destroyed. Their soldiers were demoralized. They sent another message to Earth, more desperate than before. "We surrender completely, unconditionally, please. We will give you anything, just make it stop." Earth's response was different this time. Not just one word, but a full message. "We acknowledge your surrender. A delegation will meet with you at neutral territory to discuss terms. Until then, all military operations continue." Yang received the order while his ship was preparing to strike another target. He read it twice, then forwarded it to his crew. "Looks like we might get to go home soon," his tactical officer said. "Maybe," Yang replied, "but the war isn't over until the treaty is signed. Until then, we keep fighting." The Retribution turned toward its next target. They had begged for mercy. Earth had heard them, but the response would come on Earth's terms in Earth's time, after Earth had made absolutely certain that the message was received. The galaxy was learning a new truth. Humanity could be kind. Humanity could be generous. Humanity could be peaceful. But when you attacked their children, humanity became something else entirely. Something ancient and terrible. Something that wouldn't stop until justice was served. They had started this war. Humanity would finish it. The neutral station hung in empty space between human and territory. It belonged to the galactic community, a loose alliance of 40 different species who tried to maintain peace and order in this part of the galaxy. They had built this place for exactly moments like this. Negotiations, treaties, peace talks. Today, the station buzzed with nervous energy. Ships from a dozen different species crowded the docking bays. Everyone wanted to see what would happen when Earth and the finally sat down to talk. Bin arrived on a small diplomatic shuttle, escorted by 2 human warships that stayed just outside the station's neutral zone. She wore a simple gray suit and carried a single data pad. She looked calm, almost bored, but everyone who saw her felt afraid. This was the woman Earth had sent to negotiate. This was the human who would decide the fate of the Dominion. Yang walked beside her as part of the security detail. He had left the Retribution to personally ensure Bin's safety. 6 other soldiers, all veterans of the war, completed the escort. They looked relaxed, but their eyes never stopped moving, checking exits, watching crowds, ready for anything. The station administrator, a tall alien with blue skin and too many arms, greeted them nervously. "Ambassador Bin, welcome. The conference room is prepared. The delegation has already arrived, as have observers from the galactic community. Thank you, Bin said pleasantly. Let's not keep them waiting. The conference room was large and circular, with a table in the center and observation galleries above. Representatives from dozens of species filled those galleries. Everyone wanted to witness this moment. The delegation sat on one side of the table. Sung-min led them, looking older and more tired than his years. 5 others sat with him, their body language showing defeat and fear. Bin took her seat across from them. She placed her data pad on the table. She smiled. It was not a kind smile. Thank you for meeting with us, Sung-min began, speaking through a translation device. We hope that today we can end this terrible conflict and begin a path toward peace and understanding. Of course, Bin said, let's begin. She activated her data pad. A holographic display appeared above the table showing images, the ruins of New Haven, bodies in the streets, burned homes, dead children. The gallery fell silent. Let me be clear about something, Bin said, her voice calm and cold. You attacked a civilian colony. You killed children. You destroyed homes. You did this because you thought we were weak. You thought we wouldn't respond with force. You were wrong. Sung-min's body language showed shame. It was a terrible mistake, an unauthorized action by a rogue admiral. We have paid dearly for his error in judgment. No, Bin said flatly. You haven't paid nearly enough, but today we're going to fix that. She pulled up a document, Earth's Terms. The gallery above stirred as observers tried to read it. First, Bin said, complete withdrawal from a buffer zone of 100 light-years around all human territory. This includes any colonies, military bases, or mining operations you currently have in that space. You have 6 Earth months to evacuate. Sung-min's mandibles clicked in distress. That represents nearly a quarter of our empire. Millions of our people live in those systems. Then you should relocate them quickly, Bin said without emotion. Second, war reparations. The Dominion will provide Earth with advanced technology, raw materials, and economic tribute for the next 50 Earth years. The exact amounts and schedules are detailed in Appendix A. One of them made a sound of protest. Sung-min silenced him with a gesture. Third, Bin continued, permanent human military observers will be stationed in space. They will have full access to your military facilities, communications, and strategic planning. Any action against these observers will be considered an act of war. You want us to accept permanent occupation? Another asked. No, Bin corrected. We want to make sure you never attack another human colony. The observers ensure that. Fourth, you will issue a formal public apology and acknowledgement of war crimes. This will be broadcast across the entire galaxy. Every species will know what you did and that you have accepted responsibility. They looked at each other. The shame of such a public admission was almost unbearable, but what choice did they have? Fifth and finally, Bin said, the entire chain of command that authorized or enabled the attack on New Haven will face trial in human courts. We understand the admiral responsible is dead. Everyone else involved will be extradited to Earth to face justice. That could be hundreds of our people, Sung-min said quietly. Yes, Bin agreed. And if they're innocent, they'll be freed. But if they knew about the attack, if they enabled it, if they gave orders that resulted in the deaths of 15,000 humans, then they will face the consequences. That's what justice means. She leaned forward. Let me make something very clear. These terms are not negotiable. You can accept them or we can continue the war. If you choose to continue fighting, we will dismantle your empire piece by piece until nothing remains but ash and memory. The choice is yours. The room fell silent. Even the observers in the galleries barely breathed. Sung-min looked at the document. He looked at his fellow. He looked at Bin's face and saw no mercy there, no room for bargaining. He had led the Dominion for 30 years. He had expanded their territory, strengthened their military, made them feared across the sector. And now, in one meeting, it was all coming apart. "We accept," he said finally, "all terms. We will sign whatever documents you require." Bin pulled up another file. "Then let's make it official." The treaty was comprehensive and detailed. It took 3 hours to review every clause, every condition, every requirement. They signed each section, their body language showing increasing despair. When it was done, Bin stood. "The war is over. Earth acknowledges the surrender and will cease all military operations effective immediately. We expect full compliance with the treaty within the failure to comply will result in military action." She walked toward the exit. Yang and the security detail fell in around her. As they left, Sung Min called out, "Ambassador, may I ask you something?" Bin paused and looked back. "Your people have shown remarkable restraint during this conflict," Sung Min said. "You avoided civilian casualties. You could have destroyed our entire civilization, but you chose not to. Why?" Bin considered the question. "Because we're not like you. We don't destroy entire civilizations for making mistakes. We punish those responsible. We take what's needed to ensure it never happens again, and then we move on. But make no mistake, if you ever threaten humanity again, if you or any species ever attacks our people the way you attacked New Haven, we won't show restraint next time. We'll show you what humanity is truly capable of, and you won't survive it." She left without another word. In the gallery above, a young human named Ho sat with the Earth delegation. He was an intelligence analyst, fresh from the military academy. He had watched the entire negotiation with careful eyes. He took notes. He studied the body language. Something bothered him. They had agreed too easily. They were afraid, yes. But underneath that fear he saw something else. Resentment, anger, the look of someone forced to swallow their pride. He wrote in his report, "Peace achieved, treaty signed, but recommend continued vigilance. Capitulation may not reflect genuine change in attitude. They fear us now, but fear can turn to hatred. The observers are a good start, but we should assume they will seek revenge when they think they can win." He submitted the report to his superiors. They read it. They agreed. Earth's military would stay alert. On the shuttle ride back to Earth space, Yang sat across from Bin. "Do you think they'll honor the treaty?" Bin looked out at the stars. "For now, yes. They're too broken to do anything else. But in 20 years, 30, we'll see. That's why we're keeping observers there. That's why we're staying strong. Peace isn't maintained by hope, Commander. It's maintained by being ready for war." "I hope you're wrong," Yang said. "I hope we can eventually move past this." "So do I," Bin said softly. "But hope isn't a strategy." The treaty was broadcast across the galaxy. Every species heard about Earth's terms. Every species saw the public apology. And every species learned a new truth about humanity. They could be merciful, but they never forgot, and they always protected their own. 5 years had passed since the treaty. 5 years since the Dominion learned to fear humanity. 5 years since everything changed. Stood on a hill overlooking New Haven and watched the sun set. The colony had been rebuilt. New buildings stood where ruins had been. Fields grew green again. Children played in parks that 5 years ago had been mass graves. But it wasn't the same. It would never be the same. The new buildings were stronger, built to withstand attacks. Defense platforms orbited overhead, bristling with weapons. Human warships patrolled the system constantly. New Haven had been a peaceful farming colony. Now it was a fortress that grew food. Had been elected colony administrator 2 years ago. The people wanted someone who understood what they had lost. Someone who would never forget. Someone who would keep them safe. Her daughter Wu, now 18, was studying at university on Earth. She wanted to be a diplomat like Bin. She wanted to make sure what happened to New Haven never happened again. Her son Minho, 15, had joined the Colonial Defense Force. He trained every day with weapons and tactics. He was too young to remember much about the attack, but old enough to understand what it meant. He would never let anyone hurt his home again. "Administrator," a voice called. She turned to see Bum walking up the hill. The old man had become her deputy, helping run the colony. He had aged in the past 5 years. They all had. "Just please," she said, "what is it?" "Supply ship just arrived from Earth. They brought the new memorial plaques for the anniversary ceremony next week." Nodded. Every year the colony held a memorial service for those who died. 15,000 names. 15,000 people who would never see New Haven rebuilt. The youngest had been only 3 months old. The oldest had been 96. "Make sure they're installed properly," said. "Everyone deserves to be remembered." Across the galaxy, on a space station near Earth, sat in a classroom teaching young diplomats about alien psychology. She had survived her captivity. She had made it home, but the experience had changed her forever. "They made a mistake that many species make," she told her students. "They assumed that because humanity was young, we were weak. They saw our preference for peace as inability to wage war. They didn't understand that humans have always been capable of terrible violence. We just choose not to use it unless we have to." A student raised her hand. "Do you think they'll try again?" Considered the question. "Not anytime soon. They're still recovering, but in 50 years, 100, maybe. That's why we have observers in their space. That's why we stay ready. Peace is wonderful, but it only lasts if you're prepared to defend it." After class, walked to her apartment near the station's observatory. She liked watching the stars. She had missed them during her captivity, locked in underground chambers on Prime. Now she never took them for granted. Somewhere out there was on patrol. The combat mech pilot had continued her service after the war ended, but her missions were different now. She responded to disasters on alien worlds, earthquakes, floods, industrial accidents. Her mech, designed for war, now pulled survivors from rubble and cleared debris. Last month she had saved 300 people on a mining colony when a tunnel collapsed. The workers had been terrified when they saw the human combat mech approaching. They remembered the war. They remembered what these machines could do. But had been gentle. Her mech's powerful hands had moved carefully, lifting rubble without causing further collapse. She had worked for 16 hours straight, refusing to rest until everyone was safe. One of the she rescued had thanked her afterward. "I thought humans only knew how to destroy," he had said. Had smiled inside her mech. "We know how to do lots of things, building, healing, protecting. We just don't like doing the other stuff unless you make us." The story had spread across space. Maybe humans weren't monsters. Maybe the treaty had been fair. Maybe living in peace with Earth was possible. Yang commanded the forward fleet now, holding the rank of admiral. His ships patrolled the border between human space and the rest of the galaxy. They were a warning and a promise. Cross this line with hostile intent, and you'll face the same response they faced. But they were also explorers and diplomats. Human ships made contact with new species. They offered trade agreements and cultural exchanges. They helped species in need. They showed that humanity could be more than warriors. The Retribution had never fired its weapons in anger since the treaty. Yang hoped it never would again, but the ship stayed ready. The crew stayed trained, because peace only lasted when you were prepared for war. Wu had retired from active combat operations. Now he trained the next generation of Special Forces soldiers. They came from all over human space, from Earth and the colonies, from old settlements and new outposts. They were humanity's hidden sword, ready to strike if needed. He taught them the same things he had learned: speed, precision, restraint. "You're not just soldiers," he told them. "You're representatives of humanity. Every mission you complete, every choice you make reflects on all of us. Be the best, be professional, be human." His students went on to serve across human space and beyond. They protected diplomats like Bin. They rescued hostages from pirates. They gathered intelligence on potential threats. They were everywhere and nowhere, just like in the war. Bin had become Earth's Secretary of Galactic Affairs. She attended council meetings where species that had once ignored humanity now asked for Earth's opinions on everything: trade disputes, territorial conflicts, technology sharing agreements, humanitarian crises. She navigated these carefully. Earth didn't want to become the galaxy's police force. They didn't want to rule other species, but they also wouldn't tolerate threats or injustices. Finding that balance was difficult. Last month, a species called that had attacked a neutral trading station. They thought they could get away with it. Bin had called their ambassador to a private meeting. She had shown him footage of what happened to the... She had explained, very calmly, what would happen if they didn't make reparations and apologize. The had immediately. On Earth itself, in a park overlooking the Pacific Ocean, a monument stood to the victims of New Haven. Their names were carved in black stone. Parents brought children to see it. Teachers brought students. Everyone needed to remember. The inscription above the names was simple: "They attacked our children. We answered with justice. We pray we never have to answer again." But above Earth, in orbit and beyond, the defense network stayed active. Satellites watched every approach vector. Ships patrolled trade routes. The Reaper Protocol remained ready, its forces distributed across human space. Ho had been promoted to Senior Intelligence Analyst. He monitored threats across the galaxy from his office on Earth. His job was to see problems before they became crises, to identify potential conflicts before they turned into wars. His reports went directly to Earth's military command. They read every word. They took every warning seriously, because Ho had been right 5 years ago. They had accepted the treaty out of fear, not genuine change. They still resented humanity. They still wanted revenge. But they were too weak now, too broken, and as long as human observers watched their military, they would stay that way. In the Dominion, Sungmin still ruled the High Council. He was older now, worn down by the shame of defeat, but he was also wiser. He had learned what many species were learning. Humanity was different. They didn't conquer for territory. They didn't subjugate for resources. They just wanted to live in peace and protect their own. But if you threatened them, if you attacked their families, if you made them send their warriors, then you would face something terrible. A new generation was growing up across the galaxy. Children who had never known a time when humanity wasn't a major power. They learned about the war in schools. They studied Earth's military doctrine. They tried to understand these strange primates who could be so gentle and so violent. And in human space, children played in parks rebuilt from ruins. They learned history that their parents had lived through. They grew up in a galaxy where humanity was respected and feared in equal measure. The saying had spread across thousands of worlds, whispered in thousands of languages. Humanity forgives, but humanity never forgets. And if you make them send their warriors, pray you survive long enough to beg for mercy, though mercy is no longer guaranteed. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Earth protected its own, always at any cost. And in the darkness between stars, humanity watched, ready for whatever came next.